Hello my friends, welcome back to Keto in the Chaos. My name is Tammy and this is another episode of Mentor Mondays. If you've been following along in this series, you know why I consider protein to be an important macro in a ketogenic diet, how much fat you need in order to maximize fat loss, and how to find your macros. If you haven't already joined Ketogenic Dieters on Facebook, check in the About section below and click the link and join today. If you join the Facebook group, you'll be able to get your own personal macros to do the exact ketogenic diet that I am doing, plus all the information that I'm teaching you here is available for free in the pinned post. So now what? You have all this information, but how do you actually put it into play? Today I'm going to teach you how to create your own customized meal plan based on the information that I've been giving you in the Mentor Monday videos. So grab a notebook and a pen because you're going to want to write this down. If you're here and you're learning about keto, you probably already realize that it's a very low carb way of eating. So the things that you're going to eat when you're on a ketogenic diet are going to consist mostly of proteins and vegetables. So the first thing that you're going to need to do when you're creating your own personal meal plan is to make a list of your favorite proteins. So at the top of my paper, I'm going to write proteins, and you're just going to list your favorites. So some of my favorite proteins, of course, beef. I love roast, steak, pretty much any kind of beef cut, except I don't really love filet. I feel like it's kind of mushy, but you know, that's me. So beef, cuts of beef. Chicken, I love chicken breast, and the reason I like chicken breast is because chicken breast is really low in fat, and I know that that seems counterintuitive on this way of eating, but when you have a protein that's really low in fat, it gives you license to add things to that protein to make it fattier. So when I'm using chicken breast, I'm also using cheeses, sauces, butter, things like that in order to make it taste really, really good. So that's kind of why I like chicken breast. On this way of eating, you can definitely eat dark meat chicken with the skin on. We do wings a lot, and even like just chicken legs, little chicken drumsticks, things like that. So any kind of chicken works. So on my list, I've got beef and chicken. Now, I'm not going to put pork on my list. I know you probably don't believe it, but I'm not really a pork fan. I will eat it if I have to, and you'll notice if you watch my What I Eat in a Week videos, you're going to very rarely see pork loin or pork chops on the list. I don't know why I don't love it. It tastes fine when I'm eating it, but the thought of eating it is not pleasant to me. So I'm not really going to put pork on here, but I am going to put bacon. Because hello, who doesn't love bacon? Actually, before this way of eating, I actually didn't like bacon. But now I do. So your tastes sometimes change. So I'm going to put bacon on my list. Okay? Another thing you can put on is seafood. Personally, I don't care for seafood. Rarely I will do salmon. Seafood tends to be really low in fat. And I also don't really like cheeses and sauces on seafood, and so it's not necessarily always the best choice for keto, but if you're doing moderate fat keto like I am doing, it's definitely a staple for a lot of people to raise their protein macro without bringing the fat macro up too much. So if you like seafood, you should definitely add seafood to your list. What else could I add? I mean, there's lots of other meats out there. There's definitely gamey, interesting meats. I'm not really like adventurous when it comes to meats. I'm pretty much just like a beef and chicken kind of girl. So my proteins are short here. I'm also going to add cheeses to the list because, as you know, dairy is life, at least for me. For some people, it really doesn't work, and for some people, it can cause water retention, which is why I tried going off of it to see if that was my trouble. But it wasn't, and I'm really grateful because I love all cheeses. I think the only cheese that I have ever tried that I didn't like was a blueberry Wensleydale cheese, and I actually liked the flavor of it. I just didn't like the texture. It was kind of grainy when it should have been creamy. Yeah, Wensleydale wasn't my favorite, but pretty much every other kind of cheese that is out there that I have personally tried, I have liked. One of my favorite things to do is just to go to the grocery store and go to the specialty cheese section. And so like every time I do my grocery shop, I try and find a cheese I haven't tried yet and just incorporate that into my week. And so I've tried some really interesting things. I've even tried a truffle cheese that was interesting. Truffles, I'd never tried them before, and I didn't find it to be truly amazing, jaw-dropping or anything. I liked the cheese, but it wasn't like my favorite cheese of all time. So I'm just going to put all cheeses on here because pretty much cheese is one of those delicacies that is savored on keto, and there is just variety. So I'm going to put all cheeses on mine. I am not going to put nuts in my food plan, and this is the reason why. Firstly, nuts are calorically dense. They're very high in fat, they do have some carbs, and they have a lot of calories. Secondly, they're so easy to overeat. If you sit down with a bag of macadamia nuts, you could eat a huge amount of calories in a short sitting. So that can be really tricky. Thirdly, nuts can be inflammatory, they can cause you to retain water, and they can cause joint pain. So for those three reasons, I tend to avoid nuts. If you ever see me eating nuts on this channel, it's usually a special occasion. So for example, when I go out to Texas Roadhouse with my husband, I will have 20 peanuts just because it's a special night out and I'm having a higher fat day when I do that. And so I don't mind adding the calories. But you'll see that I count out 20 of them on my plate and I eat only 20 of them. I don't let myself go crazy. So that's 40 tiny little peanuts over the course of that meal, and I don't like go crazy. Sometimes if I'm going to the movies and I feel like it will fit in my 1 hour window, I will also, so we will go out to eat and I will take nuts or something like that with me, and I'll try and tack it in on the last of my hour window. But like I said, that's on a special occasion, like I'm going out, and I usually am doing a higher fat, more maintenance macros day. And for me, maintenance macros would be 120 fat, 120 protein, and 21 or fewer carbs. So you'll see it's like double, almost, well not quite double my fat, but it's a lot more fat than I usually eat at 120 protein, 78 fat, and 21 carbs, which are my macros from ketogenic dieters. Okay, so nuts, not on my protein list. Let's see, I don't think there's any other ones that I personally love, but you might find some things that I didn't mention that are proteins that are safe to eat. Of course, these are going to include lunch meats and things like that. Oh, I guess I ought to add turkey. I'll add turkey because I do eat turkey on occasion, and I do love turkey lunch meat, especially the Applegate brand, because there are 0 carbs. And I do eat that quite a bit, so that works for me. I'm not going to put any processed meats on here besides bacon. Sausage is too fatty for me most of the time. I did make some sausage gravy this week. That was pretty good, but I had a small amount of it on a large piece of low-fat protein, my chicken. So I try and balance those heavier meats out, and I find that most sausages and things have carbs that I just don't want to have, and so I don't really add them onto my list. But if they're a staple for you, add it to your list. All right, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to make a section for veggies, and you're going to put on your list all of your favorite veggies. So my ultimate favorite veggie, especially to eat on keto, is zucchini. It is extremely versatile, and you can make it into noodle form. I have a noodle maker, a spiralizer that I got from Amazon, and it's awesome. You just put the thing in there and you turn the crank and noodles. And if you just cook them gently, they actually have some bite to them, and they can really take the place of pasta in your diet, and I love that. But zucchini you can also slice up and saute. There's so many ways you can cook zucchini. You can eat zucchini raw. It's just very versatile, and I love it. So my second one probably would be, I love broccoli. It tends to be a little bit more carby, so I don't eat it every day, but it is full of yummy vitamins and minerals and fiber, so it's not as carby as it could be. I eat a lot of broccoli. Zucchini and broccoli are probably my staples. I also love asparagus. and spaghetti squash. Now, spaghetti squash is another one that can be substituted for pasta, but it is hard to get it cooked just right. Sometimes it's too crunchy or too mushy, and so it's kind of tricky. I actually cook mine in the microwave, which seems to work pretty well, actually. So I'll occasionally have spaghetti squash, but it is pretty carby, so make sure you measure it and weigh it out. Make sure that you don't eat too much of it. I usually will pair it with a cream sauce and chicken. Let's see, other veggies that I like to eat. I like carrots on occasion, but I don't add it to my list because they're not really a staple because they're starchy. So if I eat a carrot, it's like one tiny baby carrot or two. Let's see, what else? I love peas, but they're also another carby vegetable, so I eat it rarely, and I make sure to track it, but I'm not going to add it to my list because I don't feel like it's a staple veggie. Oh, of course, leafies like salads, those are always good. Watercress, kale, even iceberg lettuce, though. It has, believe it or not, iceberg lettuce has a higher water content than most lettuces, but it does still have very similar vitamin and mineral content. It's not a complete waste of time. I love me some iceberg occasionally. And of course, romaine. There's lots of yummy lettuces. Oh, and spinach. Let's not forget spinach. My favorite way to eat spinach is cooked with a little vinegar on top. Delicious. Maybe even a little Parmesan cheese sprinkled on top of there. That's really good. And I often forget to buy spinach, so you may not see it in my videos, but I really do love eating it, so I need to make more of an effort to add spinach into my diet. Okay, so once you have your proteins and your veggies list, that's pretty much all you need to make yourself a meal plan. So turn the page in your notebook and right at the top, day 1, okay? Now for this step, you are going to need your phone app. So make sure you have your phone with you. The app that I personally use is Chronometer or Chronometer, however you choose to pronounce it. You can use MyFitnessPal, you can use any of those tracking apps. Just make sure to try and use the USDA entries whenever possible so that they're the most accurate. So you're going to need your tracker so that you can see how much of each thing you're going to eat as you're making your personal menu. So when I'm first starting out with a ketogenic way of eating, and I haven't really tried it before, that first week, you can be a little bit lenient on your fats. I personally didn't. I stuck with the lower fat from the very beginning and was fine. But you may find that you need to add more fats to yours. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That way you can decide. But I'm just going to show you how I would make meals for me on this ketogenic way of eating that I personally do, in case you're curious and you want to try it. So I would normally eat a bunch of cereal and breads and things like that for breakfast. So at first it was kind of hard for me to figure out what to eat for breakfast. And I really did get kind of stuck in eating breakfast type foods. I would prefer to eat sausage, but it's too high in fat. So I wasn't able to do that. So I started with good old bacon and eggs. So I wrote on my day 1, 2 large eggs and bacon. Now the bacon that I personally choose, I make sure that my bacon is 50% fat, 50% protein. I really want to minimize the fat content as much as possible to maximize the amount of taste that I can put into my meals. I don't want any one item to be too fatty because like I'm doing this for fat loss and I've got oodles of fat on my body that I'm trying to burn. So I am trying to eat the amount of fat that is healthy for me for brain function and hormone production and to keep me happy and satiated, but also maximize the fat loss on my body. So I have my Chronometer app and I am going to add in 2 eggs. So you'll see that when you add in 2 eggs, that it'll tell you how much protein and how much fat are in those eggs. So 2 raw eggs, I've got 12.6 grams of protein, 10.6 grams of fat, and 1.1 net carbs. And I'm going to add that in. So then I'm going to go into my bacon, and the brand that I'm using is Daly's Bacon. If you don't have your brands ready, this might be trickier to do. Stick with more whole foods that you can just get the entry information. So I know that I'm going to be eating bacon, but I don't know how much bacon I should eat. So since my macros are going to be 120 grams of protein, I am going to start by dividing my protein into 3 meals. When you first start out on a ketogenic way of eating, you probably don't want to jump into intermittent fasting or eating only 2 meals right at once. You want to eat 3 meals and you want to space them out at least 4 hours apart so that you can stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which is when your muscles heal themselves and build themselves, and give your body enough time to digest your food and do that. So that's why 4 hours minimum between meals is beneficial. Okay, so I am going to go on here and choose grams, and I'm just going to play around with it. How much, if I do 100 grams, how much would that be? Whoa, 35 grams of protein and 35 fat, way too much. If I am dividing mine by my 120 by 3, I'm going to have 40 grams in my breakfast, and I already have 12 from the eggs, so I know that that's too much. So what if I cut that in half and try 50? 50 grams of bacon would be 17 and 17. That could probably work for me. That would put me at 39-ish, 40 protein. Yeah, pretty close. So yeah, 50 grams of bacon. So that's what I'm going to put. 50 g of my bacon and 2 eggs. That's going to be my first meal. Your first meal does not have to be a breakfast food. You can have chicken for breakfast. You can have beef for breakfast. Whatever you want. You can have ham for breakfast, if you like that kind of thing. Ham's also not my favorite. But you just want to make sure that you end up with about 1/3 of your macros. So this is going to put me at, let's see, I'm going to write it down so that I know. If you hit targets, it'll show you where you're at. So that gives me 30 protein, 28 fat, and 1.1 carbs. So I'm just going to put 1 carb. Okay, so that's pretty fatty. So because that meal is fatty, I'm probably going to want to go with either a seafood or a chicken for lunch, a chicken breast, so that I don't add so much fat, because that's close to 50% of my fats for the day in just one meal. So for lunch, so I'm just going to put lunch on here. I'm going to go for chicken breast as my main protein. All right, I've got on here, I don't see the USDA listing, but I do see NCCDB. I have no idea what that stands for, but I do know that it's usually accurate. So I have chicken breast, skin removed before cooking, and that's the one I'm going to go ahead and use. So now I'm going to switch it to grams, and then I'm just going to plug some grams in there and see how much. So 200 grams. Whoa, 200 grams is 61 protein. That's way above. We're going for 30 protein, so I see that 61, and I realize I really only need 100 grams of chicken. So 100 grams of chicken breast is going to be my lunch. It's very low in fat, and it will probably taste gross if I don't cook it in some kind of fat. So I am going to cook it in some olive oil. Now I'm going to measure out a tablespoon of olive oil into the pan probably, but all of that olive oil is probably not going to be in my food, but I'm still going to track it anyway because I'm trying to keep my fats a little lower, and because it could end up in my food. If you are cooking something like eggs and you don't want to add fat to it, because on this you want to eat your fats in your foods and not necessarily in like added things like oils and butters and things, you can, but it's like best to get it in your actual food. So you can use like the olive oil cooking spray. That's how I cook my eggs, so that it's a very negligible amount of fat and I don't really track that. Okay, so I am going to do, I'll do a tablespoon. A tablespoon of olive oil. So I write that on my list. And that is 13.5 grams of fat, which would put me at about 17 grams of fat. That's pretty good. And then I'm gonna have with that, oh, one of my veggies that I didn't add to my list. I better go back and add that. Green beans, fresh green beans. So one trick that I use for green beans, and this will also get the rest of your oil into your diet. After I cook my chicken, with the pan hot, I just put a tiny bit of water in it just to like collect the juices off the bottom of the pan. My pan is really old and it's not going to be damaged by that. Be careful that you could damage your pan, so be careful with that. But it just like brings all of the flavor of the chicken into the water, and then I put the green beans in that, and I just kind of saute the green beans in the olive oil and chicken, whatever's left over mixture. So I'm just going to put in 100 grams of green beans. So let's look up green beans. 100 grams of green beans is 4.6 net carbs and 1.9 protein. So I'm just going to add that in. So then I have the total for that meal is going to be 33 protein, 18 fat, and 4.5 carbs. I'll put 5 carbs just to be safe. 5 net carbs. Now I say net carbs because I do have my chronometer set for net carbs. The reason why is because I really only eat veggies. I don't do a lot of nuts, and I don't do a lot of keto-fied products or bars or cookies or anything like that I'm going to be doing net carbs on. I don't do any of that stuff. I only do net carbs on veggies and half carbs on yogurts with live cultures. So I have it set to net carbs. To be safe, you could do total carbs to make sure your total carbs are under 20. That's safer. But I am lazy, and so I put it on net so that it pulls the fiber out of my veggies because I don't have to count that. All right, so that puts us at 63 protein and let's see, 46 fats and 6 carbs. So that leaves us with 60 protein left for dinner and 32 fats left for dinner, and a lot of carbs. So I don't know if I'm going to eat all my carbs today because of that. So 60 and 32. So for dinner, say I want to have a sirloin steak. Sirloin's one of my favorite steaks. It has a really good flavor. It has enough fat to be good and not be like taste low fat, but it's not super high in fat. So I'm going to go on here and choose sirloin steak, visible fat eaten, because I do always eat the fat on my steak. Okay, so beef steak, sirloin, visible fat eaten, USDA entry is what I'm choosing to use. Okay, so I'm going to do ounces on my beef for now because that's in my brain where it will go. I can switch it to grams if I want. It looks like I'm going to need 8 ounces of beef for my meal. So that's going to be another 60 protein and 34 fat. That's going to put me a little bit over on my fat for the day. So do I want to go back to lunch and take the olive oil down and decrease my fat that way? Do I want to go back to breakfast and decrease my fat that way? Do I want to just call it good and not worry about going too over in my fat? That's up to you, how you want to do it. But you can see, like, if you get to the dinner and you find you've gone over in what you want to eat, then you just go back to breakfast or lunch and change out one of your proteins to something leaner, or remove some of the oils that you have chosen to use for cooking, or remove some of the cheeses that you've added. And for dinner, I think I'm going to choose a veggie that doesn't really need a lot of oil when I eat it. And so, let's see. Oh my gosh, you guys, I forgot to put cauliflower on my veggies list. And I go back and add cauliflower because that one is a good one. I do like to have a little bit of olive oil, though, on cauliflower. Spinach. Spinach is going to be my answer. I don't need any oil to cook spinach. I can cook it in water and a little bit of water in the pan. Comes out just as great. and it's very, very delicious, and I could just put a little vinegar and salt on it and be happy. So I am going to do spinach for my veggie for dinner. Spinach raw, the NCCDB entry. Okay, that's what I'm going to use. Now I am going to go by grams. I'm going to do 300 grams of raw spinach and cook it down. So that's actually going to put me over on my protein by a lot. So there's a lot of spinach, a lot of protein in spinach. So I'm going to go back into my beef steak, my burst sirloin steak, and I'm going to decrease that to 7. And that should put me 2 under on my fat, which is fine. You can go anywhere up to 10 under safely. Anything under 10, you're going to be a crabby B word. I don't recommend it. I mean, it can't really hurt you, but it's just, yeah, it's not maintainable. It's not satiating. You become grumpy. I think that was part of my problem with the dairy. It was just harder for me to get my fats in, and even though on paper it said I was, I just felt like I didn't have enough. I don't know. Okay, so that's going to be my dinner: 7 ounces of beef steak and 300 grams of spinach with just a little bit of vinegar on top of that. And that is going to put me at 61 protein, 31 fats, and 4.2 carbs. That's net carbs. So that puts me at only 10 carbs for the day, which is pretty awesome. That's pretty good. That is a pretty good first day. And then, so then what you're going to do is you're just going to go from day 1, you're going to go to day 2, and you're going to make yourself out a menu. There are some ideas you can do. Oh, one of the meats I forgot. I love canned tuna fish. Goodness, you guys. Make sure you really think hard on this. So I'm going to add tuna to my list because tuna fish is a really good on the go. You can take a pouch of the tuna pouch, a little packet of mayonnaise, a little packet of dill, and a little packet of mustard, squirt it all into the pouch, stir it up, and right out of the pouch. Super easy on the go meal. There's lots of things like that that you can try. Stick to simple. Simple is always best at the beginning, especially that first week. Set out your menu the way that you want it. Put it in chronometer if you need to in advance. Plan, plan, plan. At the very beginning, it's very important to plan and track and weigh everything until you get kind of general ideas of what works for you, and you tend to get like maybe even into a rut where you eat the same thing every day. You'll know from my videos that I only eat 2 meals a day at this point. Took about a month before I just didn't feel like making breakfast anymore, and I combined breakfast and lunch. That's when I started adding yogurt in order to be able to eat more bacon, which I like bacon, and I wanted to be able to up my protein level without bringing my fat level up, which is why I started eating the yogurt. A lot of my carbs come from there, and that's why I usually hit 20 a day. If I wasn't eating the yogurt, I probably would only hit 10 on my carbs. That's what I would eat. So, and that's kind of what I did eat. So often I did bacon and eggs for breakfast, and I did steak for lunch and chicken for dinner. Or I did, eggs and ham for breakfast, and chicken for lunch and steak for dinner. I mean, I know it sounds kind of boring, and at first maybe it will be, but as you get the hang of it, you'll be able to incorporate more sauces and recipes and things like that as you go along. So that is how you create your own custom meal plan. So you divide your macros by 3. You choose your top 3 favorite proteins, 1 for each meal. You make sure you have a minimum of 30 grams of protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis in each meal. So anything under 30 is considered a snack. It's not going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. It's not enough protein. Make sure you're getting 30 minimum. And if you're 120 protein like me, you want to try and split it 40, 40, 40 if you can. You can see I didn't do that on here, but I could have if I went back and tweaked it. And thirdly, then you add in your carbs, your veggies, and your fats. And you tweak them. You tweak them until they line up perfectly. Do that for 7 days, and you have your menu. You can eat that same menu week after week after week after week if you want, until you get tired of it. So that's how you create your own personal meal plan with ketogenic dieters macros in mind. Again, I'm leaving the link in the About section below to the Facebook page where you can find all the information. Please feel free to comment below. Tell me your favorite keto meal that you like to try, that's simple, your favorite simple keto meal. Let me know how things are going for you. Let me know if there is any questions that you might have. I'm always happy to answer your questions. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to mentor you on how to be successful in losing fat. And that's why I started this channel. So that's what I'm here for. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you again soon.